Did you hear any noises or bangs?
I had a bad smell in my house the night, the early hours of the morning she was found, basically just before I went to my bed. There was a bad smell in my kitchen, basically where the walls joined together. Horrific, absolutely just, it gives me shivers thinking about it, if I'm honest.
A security camera captured the image of a white Vauxhall Corsa leaving the parking lot in the early hours of the morning. The driver was a man, alone, his head bowed. It was the car of Phoenix Spencer Horn, 21, and it was the last time any sign of her was recorded. Phoenix was a beloved young woman in the town of East Kilbride, Scotland. Energetic, gentle, she worked in a small hotel and cafe. She once said that her boyfriend was her soulmate. He, Ewan Methven, 27, was a quiet postal worker who lived with Phoenix in a modest ground-floor apartment. On the night of November 16, 2024, the town was cold and neighbors heard strange noises. An argument, then a long silence. From that day on, Phoenix did not appear at work, did not call her mother as usual. Relatives began to worry, but received only brief, unfriendly messages, as if they had not been written by her. 2 days passed, the apartment was quiet, the curtains closed. A strange smell began to drift through the cracks. Then on the third morning, Methven left the house, her face expressionless, holding Phoenix's car keys. What had really happened behind the door? Where had Phoenix gone? And was the silence merely a trip away? Or was there something more terrifying hidden? On the evening of November 16, 2024, Phoenix finished her late shift at the Strathaven Hotel. She texted her mother a short note. "I'll call you tomorrow." That was the last time she heard from her daughter. Around 9 p.m., Phoenix returned to the apartment she shared with her boyfriend in a quiet residential area of East Kilbride. Neighbors still remember the light in the living room staying on until late at night, then suddenly going out near midnight. In the quiet darkness, a series of mysterious actions began. Experts later determined that around 12:13 a.m. was the turning point. There was no screaming, no clanging, just absolute silence, lasting for hours. However, a person in the apartment above reported hearing the sound of running water, interspersed with the sound of someone dragging a heavy object across the floor, as if someone was moving a bulky object. Early the next morning, Methven was caught on camera driving Phoenix out of the parking lot. He was wearing her jacket, his hood pulled up. His face was slightly downcast, but still visible enough for the camera to pick him up. Over the next 2 days, he was seen several times at gas stations, convenience stores, and a drugstore, each time alone, with no sign of Phoenix. At the same time, friends began to worry. Phoenix didn't answer her phone, nor did she show up at the coffee shop, which had never happened before. A close friend texted only to receive a strange reply. "I need a break, everything's fine." What was odd was that Phoenix rarely wrote so briefly, and she never overused punctuation. To her family, it wasn't her voice, at least not the version they knew. By the afternoon of November 18th, a strange smell began to permeate the apartment corridor. A neighbor tried to knock on the door to inquire, but it was locked from the inside. An ambulance drove by, causing a stir in the neighborhood, although it did not stop. At the same time, a woman in the opposite block saw Methven from her balcony. He was sitting motionless, staring into the distance, holding a nearly empty bottle of wine. No one was sure what was happening, but a sense of unease pervaded the block. When the police were first called to check, fearing someone was ill, they had to force the door open. However, before they could do anything, Methven suddenly appeared at the entrance to the apartment building. He said nothing, just stared at them silently. The young officer described the moment as chilling. He looked like he had just come back from a place where no human should be. What had happened between those four walls? And does that darkness hide something more cruel than death? The first person to call the police was not the victim's mother, nor a neighbor, but Ewan Methven himself. On the morning of November 18, 2024, after nearly 2 days of living in an apartment suffocating with the smell of death, he stepped out of the door and called the emergency number. Methven's voice was recorded, flat, emotionless, without the usual confusion of someone who had just committed a crime or accidentally discovered a tragedy. It was that attitude that sent a chill down the operator's spine. When the police arrived, Methvin was waiting at the entrance to the apartment complex. He did not try to escape, did not resist, but he did not show any emotion either. He had the keys in his hand, his eyes were dull, his expression was dull. There was no sign of a struggle or forced entry. The apartment was almost intact. The dining table still had the dishes and chopsticks. The red wine glass on the stove was still half full. Everything was absurdly neat. It was only when they entered the bedroom that the horror was lifted. On the floor, amid bloody rags, was Phoenix's body, brutally dismembered. The head was neatly placed to one side. There were signs that the killer had tried to sever the limbs, but had not completed the task. The room was not even in disarray. The only blood stain was under the bed, with no signs of dragging or blood spilling into the hallway. Phoenix's phone was found on the nightstand. An unsent text message, just 2 words, "So scared," had been typed out before her life was snuffed out. When questioned, Methvin did not provide any clear details. He repeatedly said he didn't remember anything, that his mind was foggy. Some officers initially thought it might have been a case of drug-induced manslaughter, but the phone itself told a different story. The recovered data revealed a series of text messages to Phoenix's mother after her death. The text was clipped, oddly broken, lacking in emotion, and most importantly, not Phoenix's voice at all. Relatives immediately confirmed this was not how she wrote. Each seemingly disparate piece began to connect. An unsent message, odd responses, a chillingly clean crime scene. All of it slowly chipped away at the delirious murder facade that Methvin had tried to create. It was no accident. It was planned, with preparation, with cleaning, with emotional manipulation and timing. No one expected that these seemingly harmless text messages would become the first mirror to reflect the true nature of a murderer, a man once called a soulmate. The scene initially appeared suspiciously quiet. No signs of forced entry, no ransacked furniture. Phoenix's apartment was unusually clean, almost sterile, but it was precisely that neatness that alerted investigators. The forensic team realized this was not the chaos of a fight, but an apartment that had been thoroughly cleaned, almost to the point of erasing traces. Only one area had been overlooked, under the bed. Underneath a thin layer of dust, they found a trail of blood, long and broken, as if someone had tried to drag a heavy object. That matched the direction Phoenix's body had been lying when it was discovered, suggesting that the victim had been moved after death. On the floor, a disposable latex glove was found behind a cabinet, not belonging to the victim. In the bathtub, there were traces of a strong detergent, used less than half a day earlier. When Phoenix's body was sent for an autopsy, the brutal truth slowly emerged. The time of death was determined to be around 12:30 a.m. on November 17th, 6 hours later than Methvin had given a vague account. The neck was strangled so deeply that it left little chance for the victim to resist. There were no scratches, no bruises on her arms, no signs of a struggle. Phoenix could have been attacked from behind or was completely unconscious. A short, black hair sample, not the victim's, was found in her hand. Under her fingernails, forensic scientists recovered human tissue, later confirmed to be a match for Methvin's DNA. None of these clues, from the hidden gloves, the half-wiped blood, the clean method of strangulation, suggested a spontaneous murder. Instead, they revealed a calm, calculating killer who cleaned up the scene as if he had done it before. However, one small detail that the forensic team could not explain at the time, a thin scratch on the victim's left wrist, remained a mystery. It did not seem to fit with the rest of the case and would only be truly understood as further investigation data emerged. From the beginning, the police identified Ewan Methvin as the last person to have contact with the victim. Not only did he live with Phoenix, but he was also the one who called the police directly, something that seemed proactive, but felt too calm. With their experience, the investigators knew a confession does not mean the whole truth. And in this case, the suspicious order was the starting point for a series of suspicions. Methvin said that they had argued, that Phoenix threatened to leave forever, and that he lost control. But each time he was asked about the exact time, he beat around the bush, sometimes saying late at night, sometimes early in the morning. The unconscious expressions, avoiding eye contact, licking his lips, changing the subject, all caught the investigator's eye. The police decided to switch to psychological tactics. Instead of pressing the question, they gave Methvin access to evidence, such as CCTV footage of Phoenix's car leaving the parking lot in the early hours of the morning. When asked, "Do you remember who was driving the car?" Methvin fumbled. "I think it was me, but I don't remember where I went." It was an illogical answer, especially when, given the time, he was texting Phoenix to reassure her mother. Then a fatal flaw appeared. Methvin had said he called the police as soon as he found the body the next morning. But on his phone, the police found a photo of Phoenix's body, taken at 2 a.m., saved in a hidden folder. There was no doubt. Not only had he known about it, but he had actively recorded the gruesome moment for reasons that remain unclear. Behavioral analysts were called in. They determined that Methvin showed no signs of genuine shock. Instead, he was trying to build up the image of a wounded lover, gradually hiding his guilt behind a mask of false emotions. During an interrogation, a veteran officer dropped a seemingly harmless question. "When you were wiping the blood off the floor, did you see a small knife?" Methvin replied without thinking, "The black-handled knife?" A detail that had never been made public. The atmosphere in the room fell silent. Each layer of the shell began to crack. In parallel, the forensic results reinforced the suspicion. Methvin's DNA was found under Phoenix's fingernails, matching the position of being strangled from behind. In the trash can behind the apartment, the police found a paper bag containing long, severed hair, matching the victim's severed head. These traces did not resemble a spontaneous fight, but were signs of prolonged, smoldering, and obsessive control. In the old text messages, the police found many times that Phoenix had tried to break up, but Methvin tried to hold on with veiled threats. "If you leave, I don't know what I'll do." The breaking point came from an old security camera that belonged to a neighbor, an old man who was often worried about security, but few people noticed. It recorded Methvin carrying a large bag from his apartment to his car at 3 a.m. The heavy, dragging posture, head bowed to avoid the camera, completely contradicted his statement of sitting motionless in the house in shock. The journey was reconstructed. After killing Phoenix, Methvin stayed at the scene, showered, cleaned up, and then began to plan a diversion. He sent fake text messages, threw away the murder weapon, and drove around, sometimes stopping at gas stations, other times sitting in the car scrolling on his phone, even watching porn. When asked about this series of actions, Methvin only replied coldly, "I can't control myself." A seemingly small detail led to the final nail in the coffin: muddy shoes in the car. The GPS from the phone showed that Methvin had driven to a mudflat along the Clyde River in the early hours of the morning. The police came to check and found a bloody cloth, a torn piece of medical waste bag, all DNA matches to Phoenix. Every detail, from the false confession, the blood smear, the anonymous camera, pieced together a cold, calculated crime. Methvin did not lose control. He had prepared, he had lied, and built a version of innocence so perfect that it seemed he could fool everyone. But no crime is perfect, and sometimes all it takes is a photo saved at the wrong time to expose the most elaborate scenario. On June 17, 2025, Ewan Methvin appeared in court at the Glasgow High Court, charged with first-degree murder and attempted obstruction of justice. The trial quickly attracted media attention, not only because of the shocking nature of the case, but also because of the chilling coldness of the defendant. Methvin entered the courtroom with a pale face, a blank look in his eyes as if he no longer believed the story he had tried to create. In the first hearing, Methvin surprised everyone by changing his entire testimony. He no longer denied the crime, but began to explain, "I didn't mean to kill her, I just wanted to keep her." He then blamed steroids, cocaine, and uncontrolled emotions. Methvin said the dismemberment was a result of panic, not a tear, not an apology. The courtroom was not surprised, but stunned by the cold absurdity. After all, if it was panic, how could one carefully clean up the blood, send fake text messages, hide the hairbag in the trash, and then sit in the car watching porn for hours? The prosecution didn't need to say much. They let the evidence speak for itself. The camera recording the sacking, the photos of the body on the phone, the DNA under the victim's fingernails, traces of chemicals in the bathtub, and a series of fake text messages. It was an organized series of actions, done in a state of mind, not at all random. The prosecutor concluded, people can lose control for a minute, but no one loses control for 48 hours. And in those 48 hours, they were still conscious enough to clean up the crime scene, write fake text messages, and fabricate their testimony. The defense had little room to argue. They tried to cite a history of depression, mental instability, and drug abuse. But the prosecutor had anticipated, mental instability is no excuse for cold-blooded behavior. Methvin was not out of control, he was just out of his element. A telling moment came midway through the trial. An old friend of Phoenix's was called to the stand. She had received a text message from Phoenix's number a few hours after the victim was pronounced dead. That's not her voice, the witness insisted, her voice shaking. It was cold, emotionless. It was like someone else was trying to copy her writing. That detail, though small, was the final stab that cut through all the dramatics. Methvin bowed his head, clenched his fists, and no longer looked at anyone. On July 14, 2025, the verdict was announced, life in prison with a minimum of 23 years before parole. The courtroom fell silent. Methvin did not react, not panic, not anger, not remorse, just silently swallow the sentence as if it were a foregone conclusion. From the family seats, a choked sob arose. That girl just wanted to live a decent life. Many people burst into tears. Some whispered for the death penalty, others quietly left, unable to bear it another second. But no matter how divided public opinion is, one truth remains undeniable. A life has been brutally taken away, and the perpetrator, no matter how much he tries to deny his crime with reason or expression, cannot escape the heaviest sentence, the truth. Phoenix Spencer Horn died at the age of 21, at an age when she should have been living her best life, with a contagious smile and unfulfilled dreams. Her death was not just the end of a life, but a cold dot on a hopeful future. Families were torn apart, friends were hurt, and a community has yet to fully recover from the shock. Phoenix's case is a wake-up call that not all crimes come from strangers. Sometimes the danger lies with the people we trust the most. Simmering jealousy, psychological distortions, combined with stimulants created a silent bomb. And when it exploded, the price was a human life. It was also thanks to technology, from phone data, surveillance cameras to forensic examination, that the truth could be peeled back layer by layer, exposing a perpetrator who knew how to hide and deceive. In an increasingly complex world, science can not only help solve crimes, but also speak for the voiceless victims. Are we being too lenient with those who live close to us? Should we reconsider how society views and intervenes in toxic relationships? And if it weren't for the camera that accidentally pointed at the window that day, would Phoenix have remained a name that disappeared into silence? A life lost, a lesson to remember, a society that needs to wake up.